The FIA has just put forward a plan that could let Ferrari bolt a completely different engine into the back of the SF26 before the Miami Grand Prix. Not a tuned version, not a small tweak. A reworked power unit that is already running on the dyno at Maranello right now. And the vote to approve it. Mercedes is the only engine maker trying to block it. They are about to be outvoted 4-1. 3 weeks ago, none of this seemed possible. Ferrari had just finished the Australian Grand Prix, watching George Russell pull away on every straight, unable to close a gap that the car kept earning back through the corners and the engine kept giving away on the exits. The SF26 was fast through every medium and high-speed section on the Albert Park track. The power unit behind it was not fast enough to hold its place once the track straightened out. That anger got worse in Shanghai. Leclerc put the Ferrari on the front row in qualifying, led into the first corner with one of those rocket starts that the smaller Ferrari turbo makes possible, and built a gap through the first part of the lap that looked like real race-winning speed. Then the long back straight came, and Mercedes wiped out everything Leclerc had earned through the corners in a single drag zone. Half a second, gone. On one straight alone. Leclerc told the team after the race that the battery ran dry before the braking zone, leaving the car wide open with no electrical power to fight back. Hamilton was even more blunt after Suzuka. He put the total gap at 4 to 5 tenths per lap in race pace, with almost all of it coming on the straights. Both Ferrari drivers pointed to the same pattern across all 3 races. Fastest car through the corners, 3rd or 4th fastest through every power-hungry stretch. The car was earning time the engine could not hold onto. And that is the state of play that made the FIA's next move so big. During pre-season testing in Bahrain, quiet talks had already started between the rule makers and all 5 engine builders about a tool buried deep in the 2026 rules. It is called the ADUO, which stands for Additional Development and Upgrade Opportunities, written into Article 4 of Appendix 4. The system was built with a very specific nightmare in mind. The 2014 season, the year Mercedes brought in a hybrid power unit, so strong that it took the rest of the grid 5 years to close the gap. The FIA swore that kind of runaway lead would never happen again under the new rules. The ADUO is their safety net. The system runs on raw power numbers, not lap times. That difference matters a lot, because it means a team can look fast on track thanks to the car and the airflow package, yet still earn engine upgrades if the power unit itself is weaker on the dyno. The FIA takes data from every engine maker and works out something called the ICE Performance Index. That index is then compared against the strongest power unit at set checkpoints through the season. If an engine maker falls between 2 and 4% behind the top mark on pure power output, they earn 1 extra locked-in upgrade during the season and 1 more for the next year. If the gap goes past 4%, that doubles to 2 extra upgrades per year. The system covers 84 specific power unit parts, and any engine maker that earns relief must hand in updated approval papers at least 14 days before the race weekend where the changes go in. Now, pay attention to this next detail, because it explains everything about why the paddock blew up over the past 2 weeks. Under the original 24-race calendar, the first ADUO checkpoint was set to fall after every 6 races. That put the first check right at the Miami Grand Prix in early May. Simple math. 6 races in, first window to measure, first chance for struggling engine makers to earn extra upgrade slots. The timing was on purpose. 6 races gives enough data to tell real gaps, apart from early season noise, while still being early enough in the year for upgrades to matter. But the Bahrain and Saudi Arabian Grands Prix were both called off due to the growing conflict in the Middle East. That squeezed the calendar from 24 races down to 22. And all of a sudden, the 6th race was no longer Miami in early May. It was Monaco, 5 weeks later in late June. That 1-month delay made a serious problem for every engine maker already falling behind on the power curve. 5 extra weeks stuck with an engine they knew was not strong enough. 5 extra weeks of points bleeding away, while the upgrade they needed sat locked behind a rule checkpoint that no longer lined up with the calendar the rules were written for. For a team like Aston Martin, whose car cannot even finish a race, 5 weeks is the gap between a season that can be saved and one that cannot. The FIA's plan is to put back what was always meant to happen. Move the first ADUO check back to the Miami Grand Prix, even though Miami is now race 4 instead of race 6. Either set a fixed calendar date in the rules, or drop the race number trigger from 6 to 4 for the first check. The vote will be settled by the Power Unit Advisory Committee. That group has 7 members, the 5 engine makers, the FIA itself, and Formula 1 management. Passing it needs 6 out of 7 votes. The math is not hard. Ferrari will vote yes, Honda will vote yes, Red Bull Powertrains will vote yes, Audi will vote yes. Every one of those 4 engine makers expects to earn ADUO relief once the dyno data is checked. The FIA wrote the plan, so their vote is locked in. Formula 1 management has every business reason to push for a close fight rather than watch Mercedes sail to a one-sided title. That is 6 votes in favor before Toto Wolff even picks up the phone. 1 vote against 6 is not a fight. It is a done deal. Wolff has not been quiet about where he stands. After the Chinese Grand Prix, He warned of what he called political knives being drawn against Mercedes and said he was against mid-season rule changes on principle. He raised a real concern about the overlap between ADUO upgrades and a separate compression ratio rule change hitting on June 1st, arguing that the two together could create knock-on effects he called huge and impossible to measure. But he also hinted that Mercedes would go along with the result. Good citizens was the phrase he used. The message was clear. He knows the vote is lost. There is a darker side to this standoff that has been floating around the paddock since Bahrain testing. Several engineers inside the Ferrari camp believe Mercedes may be holding back engine power on purpose in the early races. The thinking is simple. If Mercedes runs flat out and the gap to their closest rival goes past 2% on the dyno, the ADUO kicks in on its own, and every struggling engine maker gets free upgrade slots. But if Mercedes dials their output back carefully, keeping rivals just close enough to stay below that 2% line, nobody earns relief. The edge stays locked in for the whole season. The FIA does have tools to catch that kind of trick written into the rules. They can compare data from all 4 Mercedes-powered teams, check car data across different tracks and weather, and even visit the factory to match dyno numbers against what the engine actually does on race day. But whether those tools would spot an engine maker running at 97 or 98% of full power is a question nobody in the paddock can answer for sure, and the doubt alone has soured the mood between the 2 biggest engine makers on the grid. If you have been following this channel, you already know we break down the technical side of Formula 1 every single week. If that is your thing, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next, because the second half of this season is about to look very different from the first. While all of this deal-making was playing out in meeting rooms and paddock talks, Ferrari was not sitting around waiting for the green light. Back at Maranello, the engine team has been running a fully reworked power unit on the test dyno. Not a retuned version of the current unit. A deeply different engine with what those close to the project call design level and layout changes from the unit in the race car right now. The backstory shows why this upgrade matters so much. The current Ferrari power unit, called the 067/6, was always a halfway measure. The team first went after a bolder engine idea during the build program, one that pushed harder on electrical energy capture and release to take full advantage of the new rules and their near 50-50 power split between the combustion engine and the electric motor. But halfway through the work, the project hit real trouble. Parts breaking, heat problems, failures where the battery and engine met. Ferrari dropped the bold route and fell back on a safer redesign built around their 2025 engine thinking. The result was an engine that is steady and easy to read but held back on power, with little room to grow during the season. The reworked unit on the dyno is a return to the road, not taken. Rebuilt from scratch. With everything Ferrari has learned from 3 races of real-world running, the new engine fixes the battery problems that cost Leclerc half a second on the Shanghai back straight, and the raw power gap that Hamilton has been open about since Melbourne. The team at Maranello now has something they did not have during the first build. Actual race data showing exactly where the current engine falls short against Mercedes under real racing conditions, not just numbers from a computer model. Vasseur made his plans crystal clear after the Japanese Grand Prix. Standing in the Ferrari garage, he told the press that a new championship will begin in Miami. That is not the talk of a team boss, hoping for a small step forward. That is a man who has seen the dyno numbers, knows the ADUO vote is almost certain to pass, and is counting the days until the rules let him act. If the vote passes and Ferrari earns relief after the Miami check, the earliest an upgraded engine could show up in a race car is the Canadian Grand Prix on May 22nd. The approval papers would need to be filed by May 8th, 14 days before the event. That window is tight, but totally doable for an engine that is already running and putting out data on the dyno. Ferrari is not the only team watching the clock. Honda is in a far worse spot. Their power unit has been a disaster for Aston Martin. Neither Fernando Alonso nor Lance Stroll has finished any of the first 3 races, with both drivers feeling shaking bad enough to raise real worries about lasting nerve damage. Honda almost certainly sits past the 4% gap mark, which would earn them the full relief package of 2 extra upgrades per season. Aston Martin's team boss has been the loudest voice pushing for an earlier checkpoint, making it clear that the sooner fixes can arrive, the better it is for everyone. Red Bull Powertrains, building their first fully in-house Formula 1 engine, is struggling too. Max Verstappen has scraped together just 12 points through 3 races and has talked about the car in ways that point to deep handling problems beyond raw power alone. And Audi, joining as a brand new engine maker with 0 past Formula 1 engine know-how, sits at the bottom of the power rankings with 2 points to their name. There is one more piece to this story that makes the next few months even wilder. On June 1st, a separate rule change shuts down a compression ratio loophole that Mercedes and Red Bull seem to have used during the engine sign-off process. The 2026 rules cap compression ratio at 16:1, but the original test method checked engines at room temperature. Several teams found that certain engine designs could hit higher real-world compression ratios at running temperature while still passing the cold checks. The physics are simple. Metal swells when it gets hot. A piston top built to sit at a set height in a cold cylinder rises a little higher at 800 degrees, changing the squeeze inside the chamber. The June 1st fix closes that gap by forcing tests under actual running conditions. That means Mercedes faces a two-way squeeze. The ADUO vote hands their rivals upgraded engines. The compression ratio crackdown could cut into their own edge at the same time. Two rule changes landing inside a 5-week window, both working against the team that ran away with the first 3 races. And the reworked Ferrari engine on the dyno at Maranello was built knowing full well what the post-June 1st rules would look like. Every part, every setting, every cooling choice in that engine was made for the world after the crackdown, not before it. Ferrari is not chasing where Mercedes is today. They are building for where the rules will force everyone to be in 8 weeks. Vasseur called it a new championship. Looking at the ADUO vote, the dyno tested upgrade, and the compression ratio fix all hitting inside a 5-week window, that might be the sharpest call anyone in the paddock has made all season. The quiet vote is already settled. The engine that won Melbourne, Shanghai, and Suzuka may not be the engine that decides this title. And the unit Ferrari is getting ready to drop in was built for exactly this moment. The countdown to Miami has begun.